Welcome everybody. My name is Matt Malago and I am on the programming committee here with ACG and delighted to kick off the event here and introduce our sponsor and bring our speaker up here shortly. But on behalf of ACG, thank you to everyone for coming out this evening. I know we're early in the stages of getting back into these live events, and I'm sure many of you have attended ones recently, and it's a nice breath of fresh air. So we're excited to continue to have these, and and see a good audience in attendance. We have a great speaker this evening. Brian Zimmerman with the Cleveland Metroparks is kind enough to enlighten us all with the great things they're doing with their organization. And our sponsor for this evening is Plant Moran. So thank you very much to the Plant Moran team for supporting us, and we appreciate that. So with further ado, I'll introduce Jason Collier, who's going to speak on behalf of Plant Moran, and welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. We're really happy to be sponsoring this evening. Again, glad we've got this in-person stuff coming back, so I think we got a great speaker here. I'm an audit principal out of the Cleveland office of Plant Moran. I'm sure most of you have heard from our sponsorships before, but we're a top 15 firm doing accounting, consulting, and tax. Focused a lot in the private equity world in the middle market arena. So thank you once again. And I get the honor of introducing our speaker tonight, Brian Zimmerman, the CEO of Cleveland Metroparks since 2010. He's responsible for the overall management of over 23,000 acres, including 18 park reservations, 8 golf courses, the zoo, hundreds of miles of parkways and trails, and more than 940 employees that serve approximately 40 million visitors annually. He previously served as Chief of Operations for the Milwaukee County Parks, Recreation and Culture Department. A Wisconsin native, Big Ten country, Zimmerman grew up near Madison and attended the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Agricultural Science Soils. In addition to his role with the Metroparks, he serves on the Destination Cleveland Board of Trustees, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress Board, the Flats Forward Board of Directors, St. Edward High School Board of Trustees, and various committees at St. Ambrose Catholic Church in Brunswick, Ohio. He enjoys golf, traveling, seeing Big Ten football games, and spending time with his family, including his wife Jill, son Carter, and their Weimaraner Eli in their Strongsville home. Also an avid sports fan and enjoys hiking and boating.
I don't like being in one area, so I'm going to move around a lot. Thank you so much for the introduction. That's very kind. It's nice to be in person, right? It's been a long time. This is the third March in kind of this endemic now, hopefully, is what we're calling this. So the presentation tonight is very fluid. If you have questions or you want to have a conversation in between, I'll try to answer the questions instead of like waiting towards the end. It's actually a lot more interactive. And for me, it's better than just me talking to you the entire time. So if you have questions, please feel free. I'll acknowledge and we'll go through it. It is a true pleasure here. We're at Sleepy Hollow, one of our top golf courses. It's in the top 25 of best municipal golf courses in the country, and you'll see that kind of in the slides of the things that we've got going on. So a few things. So this presentation is kind of a look forward and a look backwards. We have a lot of opportunities, and I just now noticed that my bio, because I haven't spoken in a while, is outdated. We're now over 24,056 acres. I am still married through COVID, which is good. My son is now in college, which is hard to believe. It's the world kept moving just in different ways, and it's been really kind of fun. But to see the way the Park District has grown, to pick up the 5th national gold medal, for best managed park district in the country. That was a true accomplishment by the entire team, because it was a look back of your last three years, and 2 of them were COVID. And so that was a really interesting challenge, how we led through it. And I got to speak on a national panel, and they talked about the process by how they pick who wins. And you have to do what you say you are actually doing. And they go through everything for an entire year with a fine-tooth comb. And so when you talk about your projects or your process or your strategic plan, you can talk about a strategic plan, but if you're actually not doing it, that's not a very good thing. And so we've been very lucky to follow that. And I'll go through a few of the things along the way. what I think is fantastic is William Stinchcombe's original vision back in 1917 was the slides on the left there, and you can see how we've progressed over the 105 years of the system to see all of the green. And I think that's one of the true successes. So we're a creature of statute. So we're a 1545 park district. We're chartered by the state of Ohio. We have only one elected official. That's the chief probate judge of Cuyahoga County. There's only been 9 probate judges in the 105-year history, 9. There's only been 36 park commissioners who actually serve rotating 3-year terms, and they're volunteers. So they are unpaid, which are the 3 bosses that I work for, besides all of the constituents in Cuyahoga County and the surrounding counties. But then, and there's only been 6 heads of the agency in 105 years. But that's a testament to the green space that's been added, and hopefully you see something familiar that you've used over time. Projects that we've done kind of along the way, connecting people. The Red Line Greenway was one of those huge projects, 2+ miles worth of paved trail. This was part of the Tiger project, not a zoo project, transportation investment generating economic recovery. The Park District has been quantified through the Trust for Public Land of contributing $890 million a year back to the system. And it's through stormwater and carbon sequestration and proximate principle and land values and all these wonderful things. I really believe the Park District is the X factor. But if you've had a chance to see this wonderful trail connection down, it's connected 6 unique communities. 66,000 residents, and this trail here won the National Award for Social Equity and Innovation on the NRPA level, which was a very big deal. Mark and I were talking about how hard it is to build trails. This was a really tough area to build through and with, because we had a lot of regulations to get through. Wendy Park Bridge, Whiskey Island, if you've had a chance to go down there to see this, it was started during my son's freshman year at Ignatius. His track meet, he was running the 100-yard dash, and I'm on the phone with the railroads at 6 o'clock at night. We opened it a month after he graduated. So that's how long it took us to work through. If anybody's worked through the railroads, anybody? Their goal is to grind you down to the least common denominator, and then hopefully you just go away. Well, we were never going to go away. We had the air rights to be there, but they just made our life miserable on every step of the way, to and include wanting to shut the project down a couple of times. But it is one of the most active rail lines between New York and Chicago. One of the very interesting things about this project, the largest telecommunications lines from Los Angeles to New York City lie right on the other side of this bridge. If you hit it, it was $40,000 a minute for a fine, and I think the fine itself was like $4 million. So we sectioned that off very quickly to avoid that type of thing, but the capacity that has to shut down the world was really, it was right within our footprint. But to see this bridge come forward, and when I got here 12 years ago, people kept saying we're not a lakefront community, we're not a lakefront. Well, we are. We've really worked very hard to connect, and you'll see some of these other projects kind of along the way. Way on the west side, we had one of the original 9 reservations was Huntington. A very interesting stat. Of the 18 park reservations, the only park reservation that hasn't had land added to it in my tenure is actually Huntington. It's a very built-out community, Bay Village, very hard for us to add into it, but that is a very unique opportunity. That's the Huntington Water Tower for the vineyard. We redid the entire thing. We still serve Honey Hut ice cream, but it's a really nice improvement. We improved the bathrooms there, the swings, the views to Lake Erie, which is a neat project. Towpath Stage 4, Dan Moore was quoted, one of our commissioners. It took longer to build the trail than it did to build the original canal. And he wasn't necessarily wrong. It was a hard process. Metroparks had built from Rockside Road all the way up to the Harvard connector. And before I got here, interestingly enough, the Metroparks wasn't even party to the 4-party agreement. We were kind of like voyeurs, kind of watching, and nobody was really doing anything because it was tough. We had to acquire land. We had to actually relocate people from their homes, and it was a tough process. But we got the city on board, the county on board, Metroparks, Canal Corridor, and it's now complete. And if anybody's been down by Heritage Park 1, anybody even know where that is? Flatiron Cafe? Robert knows where that is. Flatiron, they're actually building the park right now, which is actually, you're not arriving just kind of in a parking lot, which was what it originally was. So it's nice to see a lot of progress along the way. This is just down from Sokolowski's restaurant. This is the Camp Cleveland area, which is really pretty neat to see how the communities, it was interesting along this way right here, and then further down we had a closed part of the road, and we thought it was going to be pretty contentious, and this one guy stands up just as we're just starting to finish, and he goes, Metroparks Trail or cars ripping through it all hours of the night. And he goes, I vote for Metroparks. Everybody goes, I vote for Metroparks. And that was the end of the conversation. And we were able to close the road. We had to close the road, and we built the trail, which was really a pretty cool thing because I thought it was going to be a lot tougher. Partnerships, a lot of things that we've done over the last, the 12 years that I've been here have been through partnerships. Western Reserve Land Conservancy, Brighton Park, anybody remember the old go-kart track off of Pearl? Well, this is kind of the midnight dumping landfill. A lot of really kind of tough things happened there. It was actually owned by a lady in California, believe it or not. They don't have a lot of value, but she kept thinking it had value. I'm like, well, it's a landfill. Long story short, Western Reserve Land Conservancy created an LLC to isolate it from a liability. It's the Henninger landfill property. It's now called Brighton Park. We took this 25-acre eyesore and turned it into this beautiful park right next to the zoo. Why this is so important and so strategic is because it actually connects Ohio and Erie Canal, the trail, from Treadway up through the community to the Metroparks Zoo and Brookside, and that's a really big deal. So if you'll start to see the theme of these connections kind of coming forward. But this is an investment in the city of Cleveland, in Old Brooklyn. But it was pretty humbling to see the process. And candidly, there were some really tough things there. We had to mitigate some of the toxins that were left behind, and we actually had a huge homeless population that was actually living in the property. Lindsay Family Play Space. So this is at Edgewater Park. A donor came forward and said, look, we live across the street. You've got two very sad swings, and I'd like to do something. And we said, look, that sounds great, but this is what it's going to cost. And he didn't even flinch. $600,000. He raised all the money for it, and we built this entire system in-house. We designed it. We wanted it one of a kind. We didn't want something that you can buy from Playcore off the street that you would see at every kind of playground around the United States. These little gumdrops here cracked me up. This little kid was there on the very first day. He looks like Superman. These you're supposed to actually go up this way, but they snake their body through there. This was supposed to be a walk-up, but this was deemed the butt slide area. The kids would just go on. The beauty part of nature play is there's no right or wrong answer, and it was kids working together. Too often we see the sterile environments where parents are trying to control everything. This was to allow the kids to actually have risk-reward through the entire process. And it's been a lot of fun to see the kids enjoy that play space and the fact that it was 100% funded on the outside, and our team built it through COVID, which was a lot of fun. Rock climbing walls and other things are part of this. So if you get a chance, it's at Edgewater in the upper part. Eagle Zip Adventure. One of the things that we've realized at the zoo, and Todd, it's great to see Todd here, the Zoological Society support has been fantastic. Over $35 million in the last 10 plus years of improvements. Stillwater Place sits right here, 350 person. When I got here, that was a tent. So you'd walk up on top and it was a tent. I'm like, well, this is producing no revenue for us. So we partnered with a few folks and built this 350-seat facility here. We partnered with the Zoo Society on the carousel. They funded the whole thing, pavilions and new bathrooms. But we realized that age like 13 to 18, we just lost the kind of youth kids. They didn't come back. So we put this zip line in, and it's been really pretty fantastic. We had two donors that were over the age of 90, and both of them fought each other to not go on it. The husband went first, and then the wife pushed her caregiver out of the way so that she could go on it as well. And we're just like, this is either going to go really well or really bad. But it was fun to see people's energy. If anybody been on the zip line? Thank you, Todd. You people need to get out a little bit more. I mean, are you just been hermits? But the zip lines, the views are unbelievable. You can see straight into downtown Key Tower. You can see Metro Health's new build. It was designed specifically to see the views into downtown. In the first couple months, it did $250,000. So it's an add-on that we've been able to put there. We did it in less than 6 months. It's a pretty cool feature. So if you get a chance, right over Waterfowl Lake, which is a lot of fun. Whoop. Lake Erie Water Trail, the Coast Guard, historic Coast Guard station is in the background. This was this, and I'll digress a minute. When we took over Wendy Park Whiskey Island, we were able to secure a year-to-year lease with the city of Cleveland. Eventually, last year at the second to last day of the calendar year, we were able to actually get the Coast Guard station in a 99-year lease, and a 99-year lease to the Metroparks. So it's now ours in perpetuity. Before, it was sitting in the city of Cleveland's land bank. We had put over $1.5 million into it. Sherwin-Williams donated the paint. They painted it. Jadco, we opened up all the windows. We cleaned up all the things. It is an absolutely beautiful, stunning, magnificent facility. But having said that, we've created this water trail with its 13 unique access points, because people keep saying, well, we're not a lakefront community. It's like, well, we have to create this trail and safe points along the way, and there's a map and an app for all of this. But it's safe harbor in all these different areas, and they're not all ours. Sims Park is way on the east side, but it's just these areas where you can come off of inclement weather. If you've ever been a boater on Lake Erie, you can turn pretty fast. These are the safe spots kind of along the way. So this is the Lake Erie Water Trail kind of along the way. Engle Road Connector, this is in Middleburg Heights. We, back in 2009, opened the Lake to Lake Trail between Lake Abram and Lake Isaac. It's the wetland complex, the largest remaining wetland complexes in Cuyahoga County. Sits right in Middleburg Heights. Anybody from Middleburg Heights? Anybody know about the onion bogs that are there? That's a whole nother story. There were onions growing out in this particular area. It's a very fertile ground. I'm not from here, and I know all this stuff. We're going to have to give everybody a history lesson here. But anyway, this is in Middleburg Heights. It connects. It goes right through Southwest General's property. It's an absolutely fantastic trail connector. It goes right out to Engle Road. We've been working with Mayor Castelli to come up Engle Road, which connects you right to Bagley Road. We're going to go right under 71 and then connect it right to Big Creek. So that whole connection, you can come all the way from Strongsville and North Olmsted and all the way through. So again, you're starting to see the themes that I'll highlight as where we're going. Asian Lantern Festival, 2021, record-breaking attendance, 185,000 guests. When I first got here, so we talk about the economics of the zoo. On a $20 million budget, we were subsidizing it 70% when I got here. We have now flipped that number almost the exact opposite. And so a lot of these add-ons, like you're in business, right? Mergers and acquisitions, you do things. We weren't selling the inventory basically after 5 o'clock. And I'm like, well, that's untapped inventory that we need to figure out how to monetize. So we brought in Asian Lantern Festival, and that's helped with this process. It's also a positive of COVID was the drive-through. Anybody got a chance to do the drive-through? We got to see young kids. One of the very first vehicles that went through, we were a little skeptical of what would happen. There was a kid in an Escalade standing on the console with his head through the sunroof. And our police go, what do we do? And I'm like, you do nothing. We're not on a road. There are no tickets. There are no right or wrong answers. I said they're going to go through the zoo. We did not have all of the cars that went through in these last few years. There was one overheated car. That was it. It was absolutely a fantastic thing to do. So young and old, we got so many thank you letters, handwritten notes from people that may be a little bit more senior that says, I haven't had a chance to go back to the zoo because there wasn't an opportunity. My kids took me through the zoo with my grandkids in the car. And so that will be something that we'll keep. So it's been kind of cool. But to see, again, record attendance, we had the national record for a number of years, but I think it's the Franklin Zoo, Franklin in Boston. They won up this past year.
Can you go back to the zoo for a second?
Sure.
I don't know the whys and wheres and hows, but I read about some dispute about the term, like the Lantern Festival and with Pittsburgh, and what was that? I just don't understand.
Do people here like Pittsburgh?
No.
One person? 2 people? So here's what happened. It's a great question. So his question is what happened with Pittsburgh? So so think of it, there's 50 states in the United States and there's probably 100 plus zoos, right? So it's not a big group. What happened is that Pittsburgh was interested. We were one of the first ones to put Asian Lantern Festival on in the United States. We worked with a company out of China. It's a revenue share. So they wanted to come, no problem, come on over. What they did was they took all of our pictures, they took all of our names, all of our nomenclature, and then basically created a brochure and then put Pittsburgh Zoo on it. We have a trademark on it, but we were only in the 4th year of the trademark. So we missed it by 1 year to actually have it. And the judge, the judge, I think, was looking at something from like the 1970s. I don't think he understood exactly what we were doing and how we were branding it. The bottom line is that we had record attendance. We crushed theirs. They were actually marketing their Lantern Festival in our market with our pictures. And that was a problem. And so we had to fight them. It turns out the zoo director there at the time is no longer there. It was a really unethical practice. I mean, it was, we did everything we could to help them, but they specifically targeted our market with our pictures to create confusion. So that's the answer. We don't normally like to be litigious, but nobody's going to step in our sandbox, especially from Pittsburgh. Trick or Treat Fest was a really cool thing from an evolution standpoint. We used to have the Halloween event, and this was because of COVID. And we created these tubes to shoot candy through because you couldn't be near people and nobody knew what was going on with COVID. So this Trick or Treat Fest turns out more than 25,000 guests went through. When we actually did the math and we looked back at I forget even now what it was called. Todd, do you remember the Halloween event that was there? Boo at the Zoo. It turns out it was actually losing money. After we started to look at really how it was put together and all of the components that actually went into it and all the time, and when you actually put it all together, we actually were losing money. We're like, why are we doing something that loses money? And so we came up with this. We got new sponsorship. Metro Health came forward. So it was really kind of a cool thing. Meijer grocery store came to town. They were a sponsor. It was a big deal. And so this is now, it turned into something that it's family friendly, presented by citizens, and it's actually now positive in revenue. Wild Winter Lights, you can see these are all themes of what we've done to try to sell that inventory. I won't go deep into this, but this was a great opportunity to, again, reprogram. It's interesting, in my first, because it's been back 3 years now, my first probably 9, I'd get thank you cards all winter long. Thank you for the Light Festival. We didn't do a light festival, so I don't know where they were going or what they were doing, but they were all happy. And so when we brought this back, we even got more. They're like, oh, this is really nice. So this is Wild Winter Lights at the zoo. NOPEC was a sponsor of it. We did something really, really unique because of COVID. This Christian festival is normally held over in like the Wycliffe area at one of the seminaries. Because of COVID, they weren't allowing them to have it. And because of my connection with St. Ambrose, Father Bob calls up and he goes, hey, boy, do I have something for you. I'm like, and what is that? And he goes, can I bring 15,000 people to Brookside? I'm like, yeah, sure, sounds great. And so we were able to do this. Total attendance is over 39,000 attendees on site, and then they stream from home. So it was kind of the end, hopefully the end of it. But this was at Brookside, and they bring national acts in. So it was kind of a neat one-off thing that we had done there. We're here at Sleepy Hollow, 13th best municipal golf course in the country. Manakiki is the 27th best. They are literally, two of the best municipal golf courses, I believe, in the country. We've got some renovation plans here. We just put a new irrigation system in. We're actually going to put a new irrigation system out at Manakiki. Our own teams actually build and design those along the way. So it's been a lot of fun to see that. We just want anybody, are you guys hikers? Or are you guys just stay-at-home people? Have you downloaded the app? Todd?
I didn't download the app. I didn't know there was an app.
Well, now you do. So if you go to Cleveland Metroparks, there's a new app called Find Your Path, and we just won for Best Technology Solution with the mobile app. It's a lot more interactive because we've had this wonderful system of GIS all over the entire area, but it was a little clunky and clumsy, and so now you can go to the App Store and actually download the app, and it'll actually, if you want to show up at Brecksville at State Road, you can put in where you're at and you can say, I want a moderate hike, and it'll start to map it for you. So there's a lot of interactivity and neater features. We do find a lot of people that show up at the parks candidly don't know what to do. Like, what do I do now that I'm here? Like, I showed up at this parking lot or this trailhead, I don't know where to go or what to do. So the app can definitely help that. So it's called Find Your Path along the way. Bruce Rinker, so I talked about the trail winning the social activity for reconnecting it, but one of our park commissioners, Bruce Rinker, who was the mayor of Mayfield Village for over 20 plus years and a council member, he was named the Robert M. Arts Advocate Award nationally, and so it was kind of a really, really neat honor for him and his more than 30 years worth of service to the community and back. We won the best in the nation. I highlighted that a little bit on the front end. It's been going on since 1965. You can only win it once every 5 years. And so we've won it 5 times and been a finalist 6. So we're only the second agency, and only one agency has more. It's Maryland National Capital. They have 6. But we have the second most of any agency in the entire country. So that dates back 30 plus years. So where are we going? That's kind of the question, and the theme of what we were talking about here is the second century of stewardship and really kind of moving forward. And we had this when I got here in 2010. There was a lot of things that were going on. We had very stable leadership. Vern Hartenberg was here 22 plus years. The mission, we were trying to merge the zoo and their marketing and the Metroparks marketing, and it really became this, anybody have to do mission mission statements, mission and vision, mishvish. It takes a lot of work and a lot of wordsmithing. And what was really interesting that over the last 25 years, we've done a lot of engagements and a lot of surveys. And what we did is we took all the surveys and we started to pull all the themes, and they created word clouds over the last 3 decades. And the word cloud basically came out with protecting nature, connecting communities, and inspiring conservation of our world, which was really pretty interesting that we didn't even create it. It was basically the people that created it through the last 30 years of what they believe our park district does. And one of our guys is our communications is a very prolific writer, and he actually just sat there and he wrote it, and I'm like, we are done. We are not talking about this anymore, because you can spend a lot of time going through what it is. And if you see a lot of mission statements, they're pretty flat now. They're not going on for like run-on paragraphs. So I love it, protecting nature, connecting communities, and you'll see that theme. So the honeycomb here, it's by design because, bees and the circle of life and everything, but conservation, protecting land, connecting, and I'll go through those fairly quickly, but welcoming, engaging, sustainability, and then innovation of how we kind of move forward. So this is that next 100 years of what we will look like. The planning process, I'm not going to bore you with any of that, but we had a plan through COVID. So a lot of these things, these engagements, we created what they call walk shops. So people, that group right there, that was a walk shop. So our team went out, people signed up, and they actually walked with us in the park with masks on and talked about the park, what they wanted to see. Because we couldn't let the process kind of slow down. I'm like, we're not going to stop. So we just kept going. And then we did a lot of listening tours where I went to groups, and that was at Merwin's Wharf, actually. We had 45 people that signed up, and I think 50 people ended up showing up just to hear. So Ron Richard from the Cleveland Foundation, Beju Shaw from GCP, the mayor-elect was there. So it was one of those really neat things where people really wanted to weigh in kind of on our next century. So core goals, which I've kind of highlighted, we'll go through just a few of them as we're going through. So conservation, we talk about, why 1545 park districts exist was conserving land. And so we've acquired more than 24,000 acres now across. Cuyahoga County is a built-out county, so the acquisitions become tougher, and land prices, if you guys are in M&As, it's interesting right now. We just most recently picked up in the valley off of Wildlife Way, the last remaining business. There was a foundry operating there for the last 50 plus years. We've tried to buy it for 50 plus years. The owner actually came to us and said, hey, I want to expand. I want to sell the business. And so we were able to secure that. And now we're going to be able to move forward in a very different way. But that was another unique acquisition. Areas in the flats that we've been working on. It's been really interesting to see the industry. So William Stinchcomb, when he worked for Mayor Tom Johnson, he was told to stay out of the industrial valley. So that was, you think of it, that was the Rockefellers and Standard Oil, and that was the industry. And he was basically said, stay out of there. So they went to Rocky River. You think of the Chagrin River, but the Cuyahoga was never really thought of being integrated into the park system. And so the process now, I think 100 years later, it's really ironic. Who is in there? It's the parks, and it's the connections. And we talk about Irishtown Bend, we talk about the trail, we talk about the Cleveland Foundation Centennial Trail, we talk about the connections to the lakefront. A lot of those are following the old railroads that were actually in there. That one time where Irishtown Bend was, or is, there were 7 railroads actively working through that area, which is really hard to believe along the way. So conservation will continue to be the top theme. Connections, you've kind of heard this theme of trails, and we talk about Solon to Chagrin Falls. We're working in Middleburg to make another connection going up to Brook Park. We're working on the Slavic Village Trail connector. So our goal is this, Gil Pinoza is this guy that talks about 880, whether you're 8 years old or 80, you should have access to a park in less than 8 minutes. And so that's our ultimate goal, that's kind of one of the guiding principles of how do we continue to get closer to those communities. And so an insight, we're looking at Forest Hills Park in East Cleveland. We've not had land over there. Cleveland Heights area, Shaker, there's about 10 communities left in Cuyahoga County that we don't own land in. And so we'll continue to try to find ways to connect. Sometimes it's really hard, but we're having some great discussions as we're kind of moving forward. So connections to communities are really going to be a theme. Welcoming, we talk about accessibility and we talk about our visitation. In 2021, it was 19.6 million visits. Last year, it hasn't been announced yet, but it was about 19.2. And so we really want to make sure that we're welcoming. So if you've been on the east side, this is actually the Euclid Beach Pier. This connection was built a few years ago, but people really want to connect to water. They want to be over water, and so we really thematically approach this. We've most recently partnered with Western Reserve Land Conservancy. There was a 35-acre manufactured home trailer park. We've now secured that. We're actually going to expand that park. It'll actually look more like Edgewater versus kind of a local park. So that's a really, really big deal. But we really want to make sure that we're removing barriers. People are actually being able to feel welcome. We're working in Garfield on a number of different projects there to expand the pond and the trail systems there. From an engagement standpoint, making sure that our programs are actually in line with what we want to do. Active stewardship. We have shared experiences. I just met for the last hour our head of outdoor experiences. We have youth outdoors where we're working with the city of Cleveland. We have our mobile outreach, and we're trying to really make sure that if you can't come to the park, that we're coming to you. And so you'll see some of those things along the way. The engagement. So this is one of my favorite things at the zoo. We make almost $300,000 a year off of feeding lettuce, but it's an engagement with the zoo goers that they get an experience. Anybody know why the giraffe's tongue is purple? A giraffe's tongue is purple so that it does not get sunburnt. So if you think of their treetop feeders, and their tongue is like 18 inches long, and so they're constantly reaching out during the sun in their native country, but it's purple so that it does not get sunburnt. So there's your fun fact for the day. Sustainability. One of the very unique things about the 105-year-old park district is that we are debt-free. So we remain debt-free. So we are 105 years old. We have not borrowed or bonded any money. We are on the tax levy. We have been on our current levy will end next year. It looks like we may go on the ballot this year. We normally go 1 year early. But we've had very solid support, and that is 60% of our revenue. 30% of our revenue comes from earned services, so like golf courses, the zoo, marinas, restaurants, and other things. But from a sustainability standpoint, we want to make sure that we continue to grow. So we're at 24,350 acres, but we have the ability to sustain, maintain, and improve. It's not just hold still, and so we continue to work on that. Innovation, the creation of this bridge was highly innovative. We actually had to go to Canada to actually have a wind tunnel test so that if water and precipitation actually froze on it, that it actually wouldn't bring the superstructure down on the railroad. And so we had to go through this whole, and they had to build a model, and they had to actually mist it and freeze it and chip it. It was all these wonderful, unique things that had to happen. But we really had to work collaboratively to make all of this thing happen along the way. But it's a really neat process. So again, the working plan, kind of moving forward, mission, goals, priorities, initiatives, really the commitment to the funding sources, projects that we're currently working on. I had mentioned Garfield Pond just a little bit earlier. It's actually in Garfield Heights. It was actually a City of Cleveland legacy park. The ponds, historic ponds, had filled in over time, so this is one of them. There was actually another one up here and a dam weir system here. So we're actually going to put back 2.5 acres. We're actually working with the sewer district. We're improving the water quality. This is Wolf Creek, so this will be an offline pond. Or an offline stream here with an inside pond here. We've got funding for a new boathouse. We have 2 $1 million donations, unrestricted donations, to actually help with this project. A program center, kayak launch, fishing. Wolf Creek fills into Mill Creek. Mill Creek feeds into the Cuyahoga River. Cuyahoga River goes to our water source, which is Lake Erie. So we're working on cleaning up a lot of those things way downstream. So this is a project, this is about a $6.5 million project to renovate and really return this going forward. Dunham Park, this is one of the communities that we did not own land in. This is in the city of Maple Heights, very near Bedford Reservation, but we partnered back with them in 2018, and we've continued a very aggressive land acquisition strategy over there. This park was, I would say, the quality of maintenance was less than what our standard was, and so we've planted a lot of trees. We've got 150 more going into it, and we're really working to make it look like a Metroparks and making sure that we really have people that are feeling included across the way. Slavic Village, so this looks like the dog's breakfast. Anybody have a dog? You know what the dog's breakfast looks like if they throw up, right? Yeah. After they've eaten crayons and shoes and everything else. You can laugh. This is a comedy show as well. But this is the trail system here. So you've got the towpath kind of coming all the way through here. I won't go through all of these unique things because there's a lot of work that's been done. This is the Red Line Greenway. This is how it all kind of stitches itself together. The Lakefront Bikeway here. This is the Wendy Park connector. This is the one that feeds back. This one's already done. This is the Slavic Village connector. This is part of the process we have to work with ODOT on because it's part of I-77 and they're rebuilding some of the interchanges, so they have to help us through this process. We've got Booth Avenue connectors, Morgana Run connectors over in this area. We actually are finding out we're going to get some funding to actually connect Warner Hill all the way through into the Garfield Park Reservation. So that'll be another connection. So if you can imagine you're all the way over here, 480 is right down here. You can actually go all the way back through into downtown this way, come into Washington Reservation, and then we're actually going to build the trail connection right back into the towpath. So you're going to start to see this really theme of interconnectedness in the next 10 years along the way. This is what some of the current conditions look like along that trail corridor off of I-77. So our goal is to clean that up and make this really unique opportunity to highlight some art and then obviously make this an asset for the community, which is what we've really prided ourselves on. Another project we're working on is East 9th to East 55th Street. So if anybody's been down to Indianapolis, the Cultural Trail, they're really touted for their interconnectedness to the different amenities. Well, this one makes so much sense. I don't know why it hasn't been done, but if you think of the Rock Hall, the Science Center, and the Brown Stadium, there's no connection out to MLK, the Cultural Gardens, and all the institutions. So County Executive Budish is on this. Mayor Bibb is on us. They've actually coalesced around the idea. We applied for $6.5 million from the Economic Development Grant, and so we're going to continue to push this project forward. We hope to be in the ground in the late fall. This is what a rendering will possibly look like. We're going to shorten the road up a little bit. FAA is not very happy. They don't want us to move the fence even an inch. And we do have fire hydrants on the wrong side. So there's some fire hydrants that we're going to have to relocate. But this is one of the true goals, to connect our downtown area all the way out to our cultural institutions along the way. The BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious goal that we're after at the zoo is the new primate forest. We had our first gorilla in 139 years of the existence of the zoo, which is a very, very big deal. We're now in our 140th year. This is our drive to 150, and I won't go through all of the breakdown of this, but this dome. Anybody watch the Super Bowl? You can raise your hands. This is
It's a
good.
football game.
It is, yeah, that is very true, Mark. Thank you for helping out. So SoFi Stadium, this is the same roof that sits on SoFi Stadium, so where the Rams and the 49ers play. This dome here is the exact same material of that. Why it's so unique is it allows natural light in. And so this whole thing, if you can see, we actually will be able to grow trees inside of the entire facility, and we'll actually go more vertical, so more of the animal interactions will actually happen. So we traveled to the Emmen Zoo in England, and in the Netherlands, and we traveled to the Chester Zoo in England. And one of the really unique things was they got kids vertical with the gibbons and the animals. So there were connections and trails all the way vertical, like 30 feet off the ground, that there was little towers to go through. We don't have anything like that, so our goal is to really add the stay time here. You know, we have winter for 4 or 5 months, and the zoo is really a nice place to go, but there's no place to take your coat off and stay a while, and that's what this is designed to do. So we'll be very complimentary to the rainforest that sits back here. There'll be a new entryway with an atrium. This is the new orang exhibit, and this is the new gorilla exhibit. The Weirwist property sits right over there. So this is our next 10-year plan at the zoo along the way. And that is your update. If you have any questions, yeah, go ahead.
Are you doing anything with Hinkley Lake?
So the answer is yes. That is what's that? The question is, are we going to do anything with Hinkley Lake? And so that is one of our legacy reservations. It's very interesting. When I first got here, the lake is about 90 years old when I got here. It's now about 100, and it was man-made. It was not originally there. We created the impoundment. It was designed to last about 100 years, and it's lasted about 100 years. It's silting in from the very southern corridors. The branches of the Rocky River flow through there. The Army Corps and others want us to rebuild, not necessarily the concrete structure. The dam itself is actually in very good shape, but if anybody's followed Michigan, where the earthen dams have opened, what can happen is they can become, it's called field moisture capacity. The soil gets so wet they can hold no more water, and that's when they breach. And so it's actually the land that's next to it we have to peel back and put roller concrete in. So we pour concrete down into the bottom of the lake, and then we cover it back up with dirt so that it cannot be exposed. But once we have to drain it, and once we drain it, we're going to dredge it. And so it's going to be about a 2-year process where we're going to go through. It's going to be, you're shaking, yeah. I can't wait for the phone calls for that. But we know that it's something that we need to do for the ecosystem. We want to look at the elevations of the lake as the beach house or the boathouse does flood at times. And so we're going to look at all of those things at one time. It's about a $7 million project. So that'll be. We've already got the construction manager ready to go. It's just a matter of, anybody follow FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management? That particular dam, because it was under a park district, actually wasn't listed under the county's emergency action plan. So it took us 2 years to get it under the emergency action plan, which then made it eligible for federal funds. And so now we're fighting to find some federal funds for it. So it's taken us a little bit longer, but we've already got the contractor. Great Lakes Construction is ready to go just when we pull the trigger to go forward on it.
So nothing new and cool because we have to fix it.
No,
It's
not,
okay if that's the truth.
that is the
I
truth.
love that park. That sounds like that.
Yeah, Red Wing Cabin will get rebuilt at some point in time out of it. We've done 2 other nice renovations down there. So it's that's the beauty of that one is Whip's Ledges, Warden's Ledges. It's the trail system that makes that park with the pond experience. So I would say sometimes less is more, and we're not about just clouding things up with things. And so that's one of the pier parks. I don't have any anticipation of adding something unique down there. So, Mark.
If I take a park, like the Edgewater Park, which is, you guys have now, and you've made it really spectacular. But that was originally part of the city of Cleveland. It was a Cleveland park, and then it was falling apart. Then somehow the state got a hold of it, and it was a state park, and it got a little better, not much. And then you guys get a hold of it, and it's a jewel. It makes me wonder, why do the city of Cleveland or East Cleveland or these other municipalities, why do they want to hold on to their parks so bad? Why not have you guys take them over? And they seem to just get a whole lot better. And I look at the Shaker Lakes, and why don't you take over the Shaker Lakes? Or what is the resistance on that? Is it that you don't have the money, or that they don't want you in there?
It's a political question, and kind of in a big picture. If you look at the evolution of the city of Cleveland, it's 100 and, 200 plus years old. But the parks have evolved like over time, and so when you look at why we do the things that we do and some things that we don't, sometimes it's political resistance. We tried for 4 years when I first got here, 3, to look at the lakefront acquisition, but the political climate wasn't right. I went through 2 governors, 5 ODNR directors, the city's administration, council presidents. It just took a long time. Here's the thing that I really want to make clear. The state in their last few years did not do a good job, and they would readily admit that. But I will also tell you, in the years prior to that, they actually put a lot of money into things that you will never see. And so they did shore up a lot of things. So I'm very mindful of what they actually did do well. What they didn't do well is actually listen to the community, what they actually wanted. Not cutting the grass until Memorial Day. My first year here, I'm like, that is, could you imagine not cutting your grass till Memorial Day? Like, how does that even, this is one of your jewels. And so we really went in with the mindset of a shock and awe, like we wanted to look like us immediately. And so that's why we did all of the work that we did as fast. We also negotiated out with Governor Kasich $14.5 million because we had proved that they had done deferred maintenance for the last number of years. So that's how they got out of there. They had a 50-year lease. They were at 35. We bought them out of the last 15 at $1 million per year. So that's essentially how that transfer happened. In all these other communities, I'll just be very frank, Cuyahoga County has 60 plus municipalities. We are not a local park system. That is not what we are, and we will not go into that. That is not what we're designed to do. We are this regional system of interconnected parks. We're designed to preserve land. We are not the neighborhood park. When I came from Milwaukee, I had 15,000 acres. I had 156 parks. Some parks were smaller than this room, and they wanted the same attention as the park that was big. They took the city system, and they took the county system, and they smashed it together, and then continually underfunded it, and all it did was send it into the ground. So the county park system was actually very well funded until they took on the city system, and then it dumped it into the ground. And so we will resist all of those activities because that's not what we're set up to do. You had a question?
You may have answered it. I live in Cleveland Heights, maybe across from Horseshoe, or from Dome Creek, and I was curious about we have some undeveloped parkland, Dome Creek, my wife and I call it Boogeyman Gulch, because it seems like a kid name that's fun to walk around in there. Somebody maintains the trails, sort of. And we've also got a park that's, that are open, I should say forested, undeveloped land between Cleveland Heights and East Cleveland. And so as residents, we've talked about why don't we, Metroparks does a great job, and we all love what Metroparks does. Like, why doesn't Metroparks take over Doan Creek and that bit of land between our city hall in East Cleveland that's sort of no man's land? It's great space. And I'm sure there's a reason, but it's sort of the same question that Mark asked.
So the question is kind of philosophical, like Cleveland Heights, East Cleveland, why, where, and how. I will tell you, it boils down to a lot to politics. And a great example is Solon. The trail between Solon and Chagrin Falls under the previous mayoral leadership, it was a dead in the water, not happening. Council was never interested in doing anything. A new mayor comes in, new mayor is touting it. New businesses are coming in, and the demographics shifted in the city of Solon. The council shifted and voted 7-0 to move it forward, and now we're going to build a trail. So political climate means everything. And so those corridors that follow riparian system, like the Rocky River, the Mill Creek, it's logical that we would be there at some point in time, but you want to be invited. And so if the community is not inviting you, it's not something that we're going to step in their sandbox and say, hey, we want to take over your park. That's not necessarily how we've done anything in 105 years. So we're just very careful as to not go in areas that you're not necessarily invited in, because some parks are the pridefulness of the community. And so it's this very delicate political balance that we kind of work through. And most people say, oh, well, the Metroparks, so they should just do it. Well, they should take on the West Side Market. Well, they should take on Highland. They should take on North Coast Harbor. They should take on this. So we say no to a lot more things than we actually take on. But in my tenure, we've grown 3,000 acres. And so that's a lot, 3,000, 50 some acres. So please know that that is one of the areas that we've actually looked at, we've actually studied. It could be something, but the climate has to be right, and it's a cost, right? So there's only so much elasticity in our budget, and the ethos is to be self-sustained and not borrow money. And so somehow you have to figure out how to make that happen in the context of that, and then not lose the identity of the park system along the way. So just know that that is one area that we have definitely looked at. Horseshoe Lake is a whole nother scenario that we are not necessarily involved in at this point in time.
You're a little bit late on that one.
Now, the sewer district and others, and there's a lot more politics that are tied to that one.
So can I tell you something complimentary about it? So in our neighborhood, I live in Cleveland Heights, in our neighborhood, which is a pretty small neighborhood, I think there are 9 households that have moved into the neighborhood in the last 2.5 years, none of whom have any connection to Cleveland, but they liked the neighborhood, which is fine. But the thing that they tell me when I talk to these people and I meet them is that they love the fact that they've got Shaker Lakes and Doan Creek and the parks in Cleveland. It's just like, it comes out of, that's their first paragraph. They love the parks.
It's a wonderful asset. I think it's when people move away, I hear stories often. It's like, well, where are your parks? And they show them something that's, what would be acceptable in most communities. They're like, no, like where I'm from. They're like, well, we don't have anything like that. So I'm being very thankful and humbled that William Stinchcomb and the Olmsteds and the communities that they worked in many, many years ago created this wonderful interconnected network. And I'm really fascinated by the fact that the economics of it actually make this community richer and better. And so I will tell you, look into this is kind of the unplugged part. The last probably 2 months, I spend more time with developers and development opportunities near the park or near our parks or others that actually can be very helpful for the community. So we get better when we have these high quality connections. What's also really unique is when you have developers that will actually build part of the infrastructure that actually makes the connection to the park. They'll ask for guidance, we'll help give guidance, but then they'll help put it in. And to me, that's a really big deal. That did not happen 10 years ago. So it's changed with that. And this is in all communities that we're talking about. Developers call and say, hey, we've got this idea. could we make a connection? How do we make a connection? Who do we talk to? So that's been a really good thing. But to know there's $890 million worth of economic impact. When you talk about stormwater and flooding, North Royalton floods, Parma Heights floods, they're talking about all these things. Shaker Lakes is a challenge. We're the sink for a lot of the water, but without the park system, it would cost all of the communities a lot more to handle their stormwater runoff. A very interesting project that we've just completed, we're the only park district in the entire United States that's actually doing carbon sequestration. We actually are selling carbon credits on the open market. It took us 2 years to actually monetize the 24,000 acres of the forest floor. It was an absolutely wild process. Lawyers, credits, markets. Disney actually bought them. $8.50 for the first units, and now it's up to $13.50. And so our goal is to take that money that we would have gotten, that we got from the carbon sequestration project, and we're actually going to plow it back into the forest floor so that our children's children will have this new forest that's actually coming up. So we're actually thinking of the legacy of this park system by using it in a very unique way. So we're the only park district that's done it. It was an ungodly heavy lift, but it's really neat to now see the credits actually rolling out and being sold, and then who's actually trying to be our partner. What's really interesting and strategic about what we didn't sell them as one, we sold them as 18 reservations. What that did is it actually puts us at number 1 on the list. So if you have one project, it's 1, and you end up in the list by alphabet because we said 18, we actually show up at the top of the list. It was actually kind of a cool thing that we figured out of how they list them. So Disney bought carbon credits. So we find very unique ways. Again, when we talked about innovation, that's an innovative way that we're actually working to sustain the park district. $100,000 each year buys a lot of trees to actually go back in the ground for our children's grandchildren.
That's awesome.
So, Mark, I don't want to hold you guys up either. I mean, it's already after 7, so I know that's your first night out in a long time. You might have to get home. Go ahead.
Gentleman had a question. Why don't
Yeah, the follow up on what this gentleman said. The parks are a differentiator. So, to what extent do you believe they are truly differentiated from what you've seen in your travels? And what do you think you and we can do over the next 5 to 10 years to further differentiate us?
It's interesting. Today I got to sit. Anybody watch the Jetsons? Oh, now people are nodding more. So today I got to sit in this air access mobility study, and it's basically looking at how drones will revolutionize the future. I mean, I never thought in my lifetime that we'd see it, but they're actually a 200-acre study plot down by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base that they're actually studying with this company called Kitty Hawk. ODOT's involved, but they've got this roundtable group to help synthesize how this could work with corridors and connections and everything else. So the evolution of where we're going is going to be very interesting. My point is that the park district got asked to be part of the process to talk about how logistically this could work like in a community. And when you think of the preservation of the 24,000 acres, I think the last thing we want is these things zipping all over when you're trying to take solace in the park. And I said, look, that will be something that would be very near and dear to our heart, that it wouldn't be that we would fight it, but we would just be very protective of it. And not just us, but Clevelanders in general love this park system. Team NEO, when they're deciding how and what, we're always part of their proposals when they're putting in. I have probably done no less than 100 engagements with companies as they're bringing new people to town. Myself being a transplant from Milwaukee, they asked me to speak to groups that are coming from Texas, California, New York, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Canada, all over. And most times we give them a tour. We end up at Edgewater Park right by the Cleveland sign, and we look into downtown, and most people are nodding their heads by the time. The point is that they can see themselves here. And that to me is a differentiator that when you're sitting on that piece of green space, that 400 plus acres at Edgewater Park, it's a differentiator that we've got that system here. And then you start to talk about how you can bike and connect. And we do our homework certainly on the people, and we get a list of what's important. I like to fish. Well, we've got this. We like to bike. Well, we've got this. So we really highlight that, but it does, because it's actually here, it's a really big deal. But to be included in development deals and mergers and these things, it does matter. It's a game changer. I mean, the Intel deal, if anybody had been following that, if we would have had the acreage, it could have been in Cleveland. It could have been in Cleveland, but we couldn't. There was one area that they were looking at, but it was 42 individual landowners. Well, how are you going to pull 42 individual landowners in that short amount of time? Les Wexner pulled 5 property owners and got 1,000 acres and like that. What's really interesting about Intel is they want all of their suppliers basically on site with them. So whatever products they're pulling in, they're building it there and sending it in. Anyway, more than you wanted to know, but these are the things that we deal with as a park system. Yeah, Todd.
I just want to add on to that. And being in Northeast Ohio, we take for granted the world-class things that we have here, whether it's the orchestra, the museums, the theater district, and the Metroparks is world-class. And I, privileged to see more behind the curtain, like with the zoo. I mean, Chris Kuhar was the chair of the board of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is the global governing organization over all zoos. And we talk about the first gorilla in the history of the zoo, and that facility is a world-class facility that will put Cleveland on the map in terms of globally in that space and attracting people. And there are things being done there that in the area of animals that have never been done. I mean, that baby gorilla had some health issues, whatever, like bottle fed and never ever been done anywhere. So there are things that are part of part of the Metroparks, right, that is groundbreaking, and we just don't hear about it or know about it, but it is known, and it makes Cleveland known, just like the Cleveland Clinic makes Cleveland known, but by others around the nation, around the world. And I'm so glad that you're here to tell more of that story, because it's a secret we can't keep hidden. We have to let other people know.
Sequester clouds, that's my big idea. That'd be awesome.
How do you catch them?
I don't know, that's why I'm asking you.
Oh, all
If
right.
I can just get those things like a little bit less in the sky, more of the air, that would be wonderful.
We'll work on it.
Thank you for that, I appreciate it.
This may be just a trivia question, but I recently spent some time in San Francisco hiking in the parks in San Francisco, and was astounded by the percentage of San Francisco which is actually parks. I think it's like 70% of the land is parks. And is there a relevant number like that because it seems like we have a lot of parks, but I just.
It's interesting because it's up against land mass and water. I mean, so land connected to water has higher value. So when you look at San Francisco and the Bay Area, and you look at their opportunity and how they manage, we've had a chance to tour San Francisco's system, the Presidio. We've had a chance to go down to East Bay, down in the Los Angeles, Oakland area. And they're all fascinating, but it's interesting. They've actually come to Cleveland. So, West Coast, we had 10 representatives from the system, Bay, I'm going to forget the name of it, but they came here to tour our system. So from a national perspective, we are, East Bay is called, we're very well known from that end, but we're just so uniquely different in it. And I always say, I don't want to be anybody else. I don't aspire to be. I said, we are the #1 park district in the country. 25 years running. So, people are catching us. When we were, a side story, when we were down in Nashville for the national award, I mean, we're up against Minneapolis, we're up against Chicago, and we're up against a town out in Virginia. And the head of NRPA, the National Recreation and Park Association, is a friend. He also happens to run the Chicago Park District. And he goes, Brian, congratulations. I said, for what? And he goes, you're going to win. And I said, why do you say that? And he goes, because everybody knows you're the best. And everybody knows that they think they're getting close to you. And he goes, you've already moved the bar up before anybody even realizes it. And I can tell you that's the team of people that I get to work with every single day. We challenge ourselves to do things that are different. I mean, the Rivergate project that we took on, was the old Commodore Club, and we've turned it into this green oasis with our friends at the Cleveland Rowing Foundation and grants. And, we've taken steps out of our comfort zone to really improve, and it's been a lot of fun. And my hope is I'm here for another 20 years. So on that note, drink, eat, have fun. I'll be here. But thank you so much for the attention.